enjoy the day. Get out there, have fun, learn a few things, have some fun discussions. And I'm going to introduce Carlos. You ready? All right, there we go.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, there we go. Yes, the light. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my presentation, Transformative Quality Engineering. Sounds like y'all talked about that yesterday, but I'm going to get into some of the metrics and data of it all. So we'll see what we talk about. So quick introduction of myself. My name is Carlos Kidman. I'm currently a quality engineering architect and AI engineer at Sequel. You've probably seen me at other conferences or events, Test Automation U. Hopefully you've seen me or heard about me. But I've been in AI and ML for about 8 years now, and also with quality engineering for about 10 or 12. So I'm hoping that I can take some of the things that I've learned, some of the experience that I have, and share it with all of you, and even show you what I'm doing at my current company, so that way you can get some nuggets, hopefully of wisdom, maybe 1 or 2 things you can take away for yourself. So if I'm saying we're transforming to quality engineering, that must mean there's something wrong with QA. Pausing for effect. So as an architect, I have to deal with strategies and different approaches and things all the time. And so how about we walk through a few, and then we can kind of discuss that a little bit afterward. So you probably already know the SDLC and stuff. If you were to grab that infinite loop and flatten it out, it would look kind of like this, right? But looking at this, you probably see a few issues. People that come to conferences like this usually identify pretty quickly. There's problems like, for example, there's a testing phase. And if you look at the roles underneath, you have tester, QA engineer, that are within the testing phase, but not really anywhere else, right? Now, obviously, some people go, well, obviously that's a problem, Carlos. If the testers were throughout everything, wouldn't that be great? Sure, but in practice, I never see that actually happen. I shouldn't say never. I rarely see that happen. So we talk the talk, and yet when I go to these organizations, or if I'm consulting or helping other people, I rarely see in practice people applying shift left and all that kind of stuff that we talk about normally in the industry. Moving on. So the first strategy I want to talk about, I call traditional. This is where testers are on a separate team. Usually they're offshore, or you have an automation team that's full of SDET, so that's outside of the actual teams that you're working in. You might have like a release management team or a separate DevOps team. All these different things, by the way, for me are anti-patterns, but we can get into that later. For the testers, the focus is usually on the current build itself. What am I currently testing? They're not really aware of what's happening throughout the rest of the teams. It's just, give me something to test, I'll test it, report back with what I find, and give me the next build, and that's kind of the cycle they go through. So I call it traditional because this was very waterfall-y 10, 15, 20 years ago. The next strategy I call traditional embedded. This is where you have testers on a Scrum team. Now, this is actually the most common strategy that I see applied to organizations. You have 1 or more testers on a team. These are those full stack dev teams. And the focus is usually on the current build and the next build. Because you're in planning sessions, refinement meetings, you're usually aware of what's coming in the next sprint. So you're aware, for this sprint, I got to test this. For next sprint, I can anticipate this. Right? But notice how the tester is still in that middle part, basically testing only. Who works in a team structure like this, where you have the different domains or disciplines as the columns, yeah, and every single team is that row, right? But looking at this, what's some problems that you see? First off, they're all male figures. I know, I didn't draw this. But number 2, there's 1 tester for all of the different developers on the team. And it's the 1 tester that has to test everything that the team is outputting. So inevitably, what happens? A queue forms, where the developers are waiting for the tester to churn through their backlog, so that way they can get things released out. And if you amplify that with other teams like release management that are outside of the team, now you're queuing more things and release trains and all that kind of stuff. Releasing once a quarter, releasing once a month. Obviously, this is going to cause a problem when people are trying to move really quickly. The next strategy I call left embedded. This is the whole idea of that shift left culture, right? Testers are integrated early. And not just joining a planning, not just joining a refinement, but actually integrated into the overall process. So you've heard things like BDD and Three Amigos and those types of things, right? Scenario mapping and example brainstorming and all that kind of stuff, or these types of activities that as a tester, you can do if you're integrated really early into the process. You would think this is the most common one nowadays, but unfortunately it's not. Because you're part of the team, you join the planning, but you're not really driving the planning yourself or helping the product manager or lead developer drive these things, right? You design, build, and test as a team. I hope that's what you're doing if you're doing this, where you realize that if I'm a bottleneck as a tester, I need to have my other developers help me with testing. Or you might get other testers from other domains and bring them in and whatever. But you're trying to test as a team because you don't want that bottleneck. And then the tester, kind of inevitably as well, is able to focus on the team and processes because they're within the process themselves. And they're able to say, well, this acceptance criteria doesn't make sense. This technical design, I have questions. This product requirements doc, I think, needs this information. I think we have to get some clarity on this. We don't quite understand it as a team. So you start asking these kinds of questions as a tester because you're integrated so early into the process. The next one is pretty niche, but I call it out anyway. I call this one the right embedded, where you have the shift right culture. Now, like I said, pretty rare. But testers in these types of strategies actually specialize in different things. So you might have performance testers or SRE teams. For me, these are all testers, by the way. An SRE person is just a tester, but just a specialized tester. Don't tell them that. If you go to an SRE conference, call them a tester. They may not like that. I call them that anyway, but anyway. Then their focus is on deployment and production. So for them, it's the team owns their pre-prod environments, their dev, their staging, they own all of that. I really care about what happens in production. So a lot of their monitoring, a lot of their testing, you probably heard of chaos engineering, all that type of stuff is the shift right type of culture. The next strategy is called quality coaches. This started becoming pretty hot, I would say 5-8 years ago. Quality coaches became a thing because similar to the problems you saw before, those different strategies earlier on, you didn't want to have these bottlenecks. So what if instead you had a quality coach that empowered the team to do the testing and quality themselves? Sounds pretty great. So teams would embrace a DevOps culture, actual DevOps, not a DevOps team does the DevOps for me. No, the team owns everything that's theirs, right? They make the pipelines, they make the monitoring, they make the alerting. They're in charge of it all. So why not have them do the testing as well? The quality coaches would focus on improving quality throughout. So this is with processes, code, products, all that good stuff. And then try to lead the team to own their own testing and quality. So now comes my strategy that I call quality engineering. I shouldn't say it's mine, but it's the one that I'm using. Quality engineering became a hot topic about 5 years ago as we started to try to figure out what quality coaches is failing in certain areas because they're consultants. They're talking the talk, and yet they don't understand how to actually do the things they're saying. So, oh, you have to do better unit testing. Cool, help me learn that because I didn't learn that in school. But the quality coach goes, well, I don't know that either. Well, then you left me kind of stuck, so I'm not going to listen to you. Your credibility shoots down very, very quickly when you can't actually show people what you're talking about. So in this strategy, testers can lead multiple teams because you're trying to get the teams to test themselves and to own quality themselves. So you can actually own multiple teams. Maybe they're close in relation of some kind, but multiple teams they can lead. You establish testing and quality standards to empower the teams. Again, your goal is to try and help the teams themselves, the developers, product managers, whoever, do this activity. I had this one myself, which is always it's very contentious in the industry because I think you can measure quality. And that's always been something in the industry where they go, no, you can't. Okay, let's see if I can convince you otherwise. But being able to actually measure quality so you can have data-driven insights and make data-driven decisions, I think is very powerful. Devs and other members should own functional testing at the bare minimum. They build something, the button should do this, they can test that. They don't need me to help them test that functionality, right? So at the very minimum, they should have functional testing down, and how can I help them get good at that? And the very last bullet point is, for me, testers should be engineers. Pausing for effect as well. I don't mean they're developers, by the way. I'm not saying they're an app or product developer. I'm saying that they should have the engineering mindset, meaning that you're specialized in what you do, and you do it damn well, but you're generalist enough that any problem that comes your way, you're able to figure it out and solve it. Come up with different ideas, come up with different solutions, collaborate with other people, and actually do stuff, not just talk about stuff that always seems so idealistic, like I'm doing right now. So Carlos, sounds super idealistic. You just said that. I'm glad you're thinking that, because yes, It sounds like that. So how do you even start this thing? Let's jump in. So the next few slides I'm going to show you is actually what I used, not the exact slides, of course, that's not our color scheme at Sequel, but the slides that I used when I was talking to my CTO, when I was talking to my engineering leaders to help them understand what quality engineering was and the vision I had for us. So number one was for us to align on mission. I needed to understand what are we trying to do as an organization so that I can help you get there. I've worked in a myriad of different types of strategies, as you've seen. I've even worked in organizations where we had no testers, to great success. So for me, it wasn't a matter of, well, how can I make the testers the best thing in the world? It was, team, what do we want to do? And this was the mission that we came up with. Be a world-class engineering organization by fostering a culture of excellence and creating amazing technical solutions and customer experiences. Without any context, it sounds like a lot of fluff. Doesn't everybody want this? So I took it a step further. I said, what if we defined each one of these pieces? If we say we want to be a world-class organization, what does that mean? How would I know we're there? How do I know how to get there? If we want a culture of excellence, replace excellence with high quality, it's basically synonymous for me. I want to be excellent. I want high-quality people. I want high-quality products. What does that mean, though? How do we define that? Create amazing technical solutions. Sounds great. What do you mean by that? Moving on. So one of the first things I did that people that worked with me will attest to is I had the quality engineers map themselves onto this very simple model here, where I said you have quality control on the far left, quality assurance, quality engineering all the way to the blues. The reason the CTO hired me was to get us to the blues. So if everyone thinks they're in the blues already, what am I doing here? Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, most people put themselves in the two far left columns. Once they saw some of the indicators there, they go, yeah, my team's mainly functional manual testing. That's immediately quality control. I had one team that put themselves in the light blue, the integrated quality engineering. One team did that. But most everyone else was either green or far left. Now, granted, this is a very subjective exercise, and a lot of psychological things went in there. So once one person put green, everyone's like, yeah, I think so, me too. You know, totally understand that, not lost on me. But this was the first thing I had. Great data point. The next thing was my initial goals. Now that we have a mission that we're aligned on, I want to make sure that the goals that I have are aligned with everybody else as well. We're talking super high vision, and we got to start breaking it down into smaller and smaller tactical pieces. So first goal I had was elevate and modernize our testers and quality practices using the quality engineering ladder, which I will share here soon. I want to measure progress of quality attributes using the well-architected index. I call it the way, and I'll show that here soon as well. Number three, iteratively, this is the key word here, instill a culture of holistic, data-driven quality across all engineers, not just testers. And lastly, educate and empower engineers and managers, which was a key part, to own their testing. At our organization, the testers are embedded on teams, that left embedded, that slide that I showed you, they're embedded on the teams and they report to the engineering manager. They don't report to me. So it's pretty paramount that the managers are aligned with what I'm talking about as well. They understand what good quality and testing is too, since they have to lead their teams in these initiatives. So quality engineering ladder, obviously, it doesn't look like this in real life. This is a slide presentation, of course. But what I wanted was to get us, instead of all these different titles, SDET, SET, quality analyst, software tester, risk specialist, all these different titles that we had, I wanted to align on one title, quality engineer. I even worked with HR and a people department to say, we need salary bands so we know exactly how much people should be getting paid, because I want to make sure they're getting paid fairly. Big initiative, but I took it anyway because I want to take care of the people first. If I take care of the people first, everything else gets even better, and I'll show a slide on that. So quality engineer 1, 2, senior, staff, and principal. Even scope. If you're 1 through 3, you're probably on a single team and doing really well there. As you get to senior, I'm probably going to want you to start looking at adjacent teams and leading other teams or helping level 2s or level 1s. Once you're staff, you're for sure reporting to me at that point, and you're no longer reporting to a single engineering manager. You're probably over a larger domain. The next part is the way, the well-architected index. This is a rubric or a scorecard to say what is high quality to us. You grab these different quality attributes. There are many. I put a few here: performance, reliability, delivery. And for each attribute, you specify the metrics that give you those indications of that attribute. So for example, under performance, we have response time. Reliability, there's failure rate, uptime, delivery, CI success rate, let's say. And then you map those services or entities onto the way. Looking at this team has 3 services, A, B, and C. What are some insights you gain just from this visual? You don't have to answer that. Number 1, you see that service C is the slowest service this team has. But service A is the one that fails the most. A 13% failure rate, kind of crazy. But you also see that the entire team has issues with CI, because most of those success rates are pretty low. Well, what does low mean? Maybe you go, actually, that's not that bad, Carlos. So you have to define what's bad, what's good. You have to define that. Talk about that here soon. So timeline-wise, I wanted to give them an idea of, here's what I'm expecting to have happen from a high level. In Q1, I want to roll out the ladder. I want to define version 0.1 of the way. Notice how I said 0.1, because I'm going to iterate on this thing. And then have some teams pilot the way, so then we can start learning and doing stuff with it. So there'll be a tester on a team, and we're going to do it on that team. I'll be working with them very closely. We'll get the way set up. We'll get some good standard practices for testing, for quality. We'll start doing that. Once we get good at it, then I want them to move to an adjacent team and do the exact same thing. Eventually, you can see there next year, eventually, we want to start scaling this to the rest of the organization. Changes like this, you can move really quickly, but because I wanted to bring all the quality engineers along and raise it all together, it's going to take a little bit longer. So going back to aligning on mission, I need to align them on timeline, on expectations, so that way we all agree. If they don't agree, it's going to be so hard for me to move forward. If they do agree, then I can keep pointing back to this. Remember how we said, remember that you agreed with? And I can keep moving forward in that way and stay on track with them, aligned with leaders as well. And then, of course, a few pieces that we got to make sure I call out. Number 1 is calibration. Do we have the right people in the right places? Unfortunately, we had some people that were like, I'm not going to do this. I like doing manual functional testing. That's all I want to do the rest of my life. Then you're not a good fit for SQL anymore. And they left. Some people rose to the challenge and said, I want to try this. This sounds amazing. What can I do? And they started getting really proactive with it and started learning on their own, searching topics, searching different presentations, following people, doing the whole thing. That sounds like the right person for the job. I love that. I needed to also hire people as well. But now that I'm hiring and I'm aligned with all of this, I know who I'm hiring for and the problems they're going to be solving. So now I can hire the right people and put them in the right place. Number 2, education. Most people that I had, again, were in the yellow or oranges of that one slide. And so there's going to be lots of education that has to happen in order to level them up. If they don't know how to code, for example, or do any programming automation, that needs to be taken into account. How can we bring them as well and help them be able to leverage AI or automation to do those types of things in their job? Make their lives easier, honestly. And then lastly, optimization. As we start doing this across multiple teams, patterns will start to arise. We start to learn, oh, it would make sense if we did this one thing across all of our teams. So now we can create documentation, guides, templates, automations at scale because of that. Last thing on the slide, notice how it gets more gray the further to the right we go? Because the less I know, right, the further that we go. So I know a lot right here, and then all of a sudden it's like, in a year, I don't know. And I make sure that was clear to my people as well. I don't know what next year's gonna look like, but I have an idea. Then you start small. I'm going to meet with managers one-on-one to map their testers onto the ladder. I'm going to do the same thing with the testers as well. I need to define version 0.1 of the way. I'm talking about it, but now I got to implement it. And then start the quality engineering community and find people that I can empower to help lead that initiative with me as well. So when I say measuring quality, it's these 5 big buckets that I'm talking about. I used to call it the 3 Ps, people, process, and products, because I had code and system within products, but now I break it out into 5. After reading an article from Google, that was very enlightening for me. So people, processes, code, systems, and products. These 5 big buckets is what I care about as an architect of measuring the quality of. So for people, the quality engineering ladder is what I used. So let's jump into it. For the latter, I didn't want to just specify be a good leader, do good at your job, care about people. Like, yes, those are all great soft skills, obviously. Do those things. Everyone should do that, whether you're a quality engineer or not. Yes, care about people, care about your job. Yeah, all that good stuff. I actually wanted to specify the hard skills. What makes a quality engineer great? What makes a quality engineer, different from other disciplines? So I came up with what I called core masteries. These are the 6 things that, for me, make a well-rounded quality engineer. First one is test strategy and design. Number 2 is test methodologies. And I can dive into these. Test methodologies basically is how you apply the things that you learn. We hear black box testing, gray box testing, functional, non-functional, performance, contract, all these different terms that we use in the space. A, do you understand what they mean? And 2, do you know how to apply them? That's test methodologies. Programming and automation, which means, yes, 10 toes down, I do think quality engineers should know how to do programming and automation. Moving on. Shift left quality, which is, yes, being as early in the process, because that does matter. That greatly impacts what happens on the other side. Like if we look at this, for example, notice how their arrow is going to the right. Why? Because the furthest left one, people, is causal to the ones to the right. Again, the better your people, the better your processes. The better your systems, the better your product will be, because it's easier to control. It's easier to change things, right? And so each one of these pieces feeds into the next. So if we're saying shift left, I'm literally saying you need to have the right people so you can shift left. We can say shift left all you want, but if product managers don't want you there, nothing's going to change. So to me, that's not the right person in the right place. I'd fire the product manager, get a new one that actually knows what this is all about. All right. Quality analysis and observability, meaning that you actually do analytics. You understand in production, how is my stuff performing? Or do you only know quality when you run your tests? Is that the only time you know the quality of your product? Or are you constantly analyzing and observing your product? And lastly, AI in testing. I do think every tester should know how to work with AI for lots of reasons, but it does actually help you out with your job quite a bit if you know how to use it. So I'm not saying you have to be an expert AI person, not at all. But have you actually tried to use AI for different things that you do, whether it's testing or not? If you haven't really given it a chance then. You don't know its limitations. You don't know what it's really good at, actually. As an architect, part of our job is to analyze things so we can weigh trade-offs. Almost every decision that we make has pros and cons, has trade-offs. If we don't understand what those things are, then we look really biased. I don't like it because I don't like it. Well, I'm never convincing anyone then. Well, I like this because I like it. Well, everyone's going to go, well, you didn't like that for no good reason, so you like this for no good reason. And your credibility gets shot down again. Can you imagine? And then I had specializations. These are specialized masteries that not every quality engineer needs to have, but kind of naturally, as you start progressing to senior and staff and everything, you start to gravitate towards some of these, right? You might be like a front-end product. And so accessibility really matters to your team, and you just get really good at it. You understand the tools, how to test for things, understand YCAG, all that kind of stuff. Where if you're like a back-end team and you understand like integrations and contracts, well, then you might be doing more things like the chaos or SRE side of things. My product has 30 third-party dependencies. They're not our dependencies, it's some other one like a Stripe or something. And so yeah, we care about our integration with them, but I don't need to test Stripe directly. Well, then now you're looking at more of the chaos SRE side of things where you go, what happens if they're slow? What happens if they're not available? What happens if now you're asking the same types of testing questions, just in a different context? So defining the ladder. Again, this is not the actual quality ladder itself. It's much bigger than this. But in here, I wanted to show some examples. In the spreadsheet that I have, it's an Excel spreadsheet, and every column is the level, right? Level 1, level 2, senior, staff, principal. And in there, for every one of these masteries, I specify as level 1, here's what you should know when it comes to test strategy and design. For example, write basic negative and positive scenarios. Really basic bullet point. Level 2 is a little bit more than that. Maintains test case organization and structure for team efficiency. A senior should be even more, a staff even more, and a principal even more. But I'm specifying these things that way people know if I'm a level 2, how do I get to a level 3? What are the expectations of a level 3 versus what I know as a level 2? There's quite a bit of these bullet points, again, that people that work with me can attest to. There's quite a bit in there. But it's specific enough that you know exactly what the lines are between these roles, and vague enough that me, the manager, and the tester can create career plans that are tailored to what you own and what you can do, so you can move up the ladder as well and be successful. After this, I map the testers onto the ladder. So it's on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 meaning I know nothing, 5 meaning I feel like I'm a principal level at this thing. Grade yourself on here. Again, every column is one of those masteries, and every row was a person. So you could get a grand score of 30. If you were 5 on all of them, you'd get 30 on this. And that means that you're probably principal, right? But notice, just looking at this heat map here, you probably see some very interesting insights. If we look at the rows, we see like number 2, for example, that 2 there, that's red, very dark red. They feel like, well, I'm a level 1 in methodologies, level 1 in shift left, but I don't know anything else. This person was a level 2 that had been there for a decade. Very interesting. Again, subjective exercise. I totally understand, not lost on me. But it's so interesting when you grab this information to say, well, what do they know? What are they confident in? What are they not? Notice how the AI and analysis observability are the lightest ones. So now I can work with my community lead and say, hey, this is probably the areas that we can help out the most. What if we come up with different activities? What if we curate some resources to help people learn these things so they can start trying it themselves? What if we gave them examples of how to do AI in testing? Let's record that. Let's start sharing that information so people start moving up. I would expect all my level 1 people to be 1s across the board. Level 2 should be 2s across the board, right? In an ideal world, right? Wouldn't that make sense? A level 2 should be 2s across. That makes sense. So my hope is that in 6, 12 months when I do this again, all my level 1s are 1s across. All my level 2s are 2s across. Because then they're saying, I feel confident that I do know these masteries and that I'm doing them well. And let's say in 12 months, it's the exact same, then I'm failing, my community lead is failing, we're failing, because we're not doing a good job of teaching everyone. So now I'm holding myself accountable using this data as well. Am I gonna fire the people that are red? No. Again, subjective exercise, that'd be dumb for me to do. But now I can have conversations with them. Why'd you put yourself here? I'm getting insights here that we can use to create decisions, to drive initiatives as an organization. All right, moving on to the way. You gotta define the rubric. So when I said, yeah, we had performance, you have to actually specify what these things are. Remember when I showed you that mission statement of world-class organization? Well, here's how I'm defining world-class. So your response time, P50. World-class is less than or equal to 50 milliseconds. If you're on average that, then I would say, yes, for your response time P50, you are world-class. If you are greater than 350 milliseconds, critical, you're gonna get flagged red, and that's gonna give us the same insights that you saw in the previous slide. Very interesting. Failure rate. World-class is less than 0.01%. For us, that's world-class. If you're outside of that, you can see maybe you're good, maybe you're acceptable, concerning, or anything above that, critical, what we need to do. And every single metric, every single attribute, you do the same thing on. You specify what does good mean actually. From there, you map those entities onto the rubric, onto the way, very similar to that heat map, you might say, and you get this. Notice how we have, for these two teams, critical. One is critical because they have no data. So they have no idea how their stuff is doing in production. They have no observability at all. So because they have no data, I'm blind, critical immediately. Service A there is critical as well because their failure rate is 24.86%, meaning that a quarter of their requests are failing. Well, that seems pretty low quality. But maybe it's how they're doing things. Maybe, for example, our metric is only capturing anything that's non-200. And they might say, well, hold on, we have some requests that are 404s or 403s that are expected. Those aren't failures. Oh, cool, then let's adjust your metric to get a more accurate representation of your actual failure rate. And maybe it skyrockets down to like 2%, just because of that one conversation. So again, this is not me to go, bad developer team. No, not at all. It's meant to give us insights and data-driven points so we can have conversations and start making moves. On top of this, notice how we can actually say something do something and now measure it. I think that in order to get our, let's say our P99 from the 3453, we want to get it down to acceptable. What do we need to do? We can now make an initiative or make a technical item inside your Jira board, let's say, and actually measure, did we do it? Did we solve the problem? Are we getting better at quality or not? And we have the mechanisms in place to track that progress and actually measure quality. The team at the bottom, BAS, Service D here, they're doing really well. Their failure rate is world-class, and their other pieces are really good. So maybe we can ask that team, can you help us with what you're doing really well, so we can use that for the other teams and help spread the love. Get them better at quality, because clearly you're doing it really well. What are you doing differently? But do you think I'm going to spend all my time and energy on Service D? No. I'm probably going to spend my energy on Service A and Service C. Service C, I need to get visibility. Why am I blind to this? I'm going to go figure that out, work with that team to do so. Service A, why is your failure rate so crazy? Why is it so high? How can we lower this down? How can we help you? Do you need support from other people? Now we're working together, right? So if you're interested in learning more, here's some topics or terms that you can use to Google or use your AI. That would probably be a really good way to do it too, because you can have a conversation and ask questions about this stuff. But these are some terms that you can start searching for if you want to learn more about all the stuff that I'm talking about. Things like the well-architected framework is a very common concept in architecture. So this is not like an invention of mine. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants that have already created things like this, but I'm applying it now to the context at SQL. All right, Joe, well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I'm ready for some Q&A, y'all. Thank you.
Do we have green cards?
Whoa, hold on. Green card.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm a citizen.
We'll start. Wait, where's my, do I have a mic runner? Matt, will you run mics? Okay. Oh, there's, okay. Yep, go to Carol.
I don't have my glasses, so please raise your hand.
Oh, we're going to start with the woman in the, yep.
Hi, you had a slide where you explained the transition going to quality engineering, and you had a series of things that you were doing associated with those different roles and levels, and I was kind of leading up to where you ended. But the items that were under each of those, did you view those as additive or discrete? Like as in, when you start at level 1 there, do you abandon that as you get to quality engineering?
All right, let me get there. Did everyone online hear that, by the way, or do I have to repeat it?
Please repeat it.
Okay, so I'll do my best to repeat the question. Basically, this slide that we're talking about, right? So on this slide, are things from the left to the right additive, or it's like your manual functional testing is only a quality control thing only? I think that was the spirit of the question, right? So I would say it's definitely a lot more additive. I think some of these pieces, every model is wrong, right? I think every model is wrong. That's why I'm like, I use this one from TAP QA, but it's meant to be helpful more than anything. So let me hide this, go away. So in this case, like when it comes to manual functional testing, that's something that I think you should just do throughout. But that minimal processes, well, no, that one's not additive, right? That's not one that I would say is additive. It's like you should have better processes. Not more process, just better ones. All right, so hopefully that answers your question. There's like limited test automation. You should have way more test automation the further right you go. Minimal use of tools, probably more use of tools, but not like a million, right? You probably want to have a good subset of tools that do what you need. Lack of metrics, I'm talking about you need more metrics. So I don't want to say that everything is not additive, because I do think the manual testing should be everywhere, but hopefully that answers your question. Awesome.
Hi, I'm curious how you landed on 1 year, and what are the targets for that 1 year mark?
So this part here? Yeah, so on this part here, I'm already late on this, just so you know. So the first item, roll out the QE ladder, I got done in Q2, beginning of Q3. So that's the reason why I put here, like, there's this idea of what I want to get done, but the further to the right I go, it gets more gray because I really don't know. And there's factors that I'm not in control of. So the fact that it took me a quarter to really get all the managers to understand and engage with it, I was anticipating in a way, but I didn't have a timeline for that. So these are really general timelines, and I made that very clear in my communication with people. So I'm a quarter late, but I'm constantly leading up. So they're very aware of that. So it wasn't actually a problem. So the reason why a year is because I wanted to say, I don't want to be like, in 5 years' time, that's so far, I have no idea. So how about 12 months or 4 or 5 quarters? I can work in that kind of a time frame, that kind of a headspace, and I can communicate that headspace with other people as well. So anything more than that, I think would have been not very good on my part. So.
Brian.
All right, Carlos, you have your timeline up there. I'm curious how, like, if the final step, optimize and expand to the organization. When you have an organization like over 1,000 people, you have a lot of pushback because they have different opinions and different ideas of what tools to use. How did you implement that to the whole organization to get the same buy-in?
Yeah, so I'm currently in the process of this at SQL, but I'll talk about Workfront Adobe because I did that there all the way complete. So at Workfront Adobe, very similar, but our timeline was way more aggressive. I had 12 months to do this whole transformation. And so there we did some things to do that. For example, we ended up getting rid of the quality organization altogether. And that made it go really fast because if there were no testers in the way of doing testing and quality, the teams were forced to do it themselves. And so it forced people into that really uncomfortable space already, and that was prime time to teach them how to actually do it well, because they were eager to learn that. Now, I don't want to do that at SQL, of course, because that was a very spicy way to do it, very fast, but very spicy. So here at SQL, because we're not doing that, I'm going to bring everyone along for the ride. So in order to do it, I'm using what we call like a land and expand or a lighthouse kind of approach, where you do one team, I think I'm close to this, you have one team that does it really well, and that becomes the lighthouse team to then show others how to do that well too, right? And so if you have the data to back it up, how could anyone say, oh, well, this yellow team here, I don't want to do what they're doing when they're world class on everything and you're not, right? How could they say, no, I don't want that? I'm aligned with my CTO and other engineering leaders, so they're going to say, well, we do want that. And if the manager goes, well, I just don't want to, probably goodbye, engineering manager, because you're not the right person for the job then, because we want to do this. We want to be world class, and you're saying you don't want to be. So it's why data is so important, because I can actually prove evidence-wise that the yellow team is doing really well. It's hard to argue that, by the way. That's why it's so important.
We have a question from Zoom.
All right, this is from Charles. How do you measure failure rate, and how do you break down an app under test into testable units?
Can you repeat the question?
I didn't hear that last part.
Oh, how do you break down an app under test into testable units?
Into testable units. So I feel like there's two parts of that question. So there's the first part where it's how do you define failure rate?
Measure failure.
How do you measure failure rate? And then how do you break an app into testable components?
Yes.
Then that second one's a big one. So the first one for failure rates, failure rate is a very large term for a lot of different things. So for example, in the example that I put here, where the failure rate was on an API, you get a request back, and anything that's not 200 would technically be a failure, right? So that's very clear. It's very, very clear. Not a 200, that's a point or a count towards failure rate. But you can apply failure rate to things like a CI pipeline. How many pipelines of yours pass versus fail? If you look at a pipeline, you have like different quality gates. So you can say, how often does my unit tests fail? And get a failure rate on just that. Like, you can break failure rate into many different categories. So I hope that answers that. Failure rate can mean a lot of things, right? How many stories actually made it to getting released and how many stories got rejected? So story failure rate, like, it's very easy to make that metric. For the other piece of breaking an app down, that's one of the pieces you do as a tester. So if you don't already know how to do that, do this today. Literally go to saucedemo.com and see if you can break down the application into areas and workflows, features, and then scenarios to test those scenarios to test the workflows or the area. Right? This is a fundamental thing, and it's why test strategy and design was #1 on my core mastery. Because if you're unable to actually break down an application into testable pieces, that's literally one of the fundamental parts of what we do in our job. So yeah, practice that. I would say practice, I guess. And ask people in the community, did I break this down good? How would you break it down? Get some feedback that way.
All right. So at the onset of this initiative, you probably didn't have metrics in place yet or data to rely on and make your arguments. So how do you, at the start of something like this, get leadership on board? Do you have some tips for that?
So, okay, repeating, I may not have had, you're saying you may not have had data points in order to measure all this stuff, so I had to get that started. I think that's kind of the question, right? So in SQL's case, and same thing with Workfront Adobe, they actually had lots of data. In fact, I would call it data puke, where you have so much data that you don't really, it's blurry, right? Because I don't want to name tools, but you know, like New Relic, Datadog, all those kinds of things. Imagine having like New Relic, Datadog, Dynatrace, Quantimetric, Splunk, Sneak, like you have all these different tools, and all of them are giving you all this telemetry, all this data, all these insights, all these monitors, and they go, okay, here's all this information. Ugh. How's our quality, right? It's too much data. So instead, we went down even smaller, and I think in the slide I actually showed that, but it's fine. But you actually have to break down, like instead of all of the data, here's specific metrics that I want to capture. Which tool gives me the data I need to answer those questions? So when I said failure rate, we wanted failure rate of an API or a service. How can I get that? Which of all these tools that we have, which one is going to be the one that answers those questions for me so I can add that rubric and create the world-class, good, acceptable. So in my case, it was a lots of stuff, make one, and have that one answer the questions for me. If I had nothing, then I would start looking to create something. So let's say if we were in AWS, I would say, can I answer these questions with something like a CloudWatch, which comes kind of out of the box for you? Are we using Kubernetes? What are we using to monitor those things? Can I leverage that in order to answer some of these questions? If I have blind spots, then let's start evaluating tools. Do a tech radar to see which tools will help us answer these questions, and I would go that way.
Zoom.
Okay, from Zoomland, this is from Monica. Did anything come up that changed the trajectory of the project? And how did you get buy-in from leadership knowing how ambiguous things could get towards the end of the year?
Sorry, I'm trying to move to the left here. Oh, not this one, this one. So how did I anticipate, say the question one more time, then I'll repeat it. It's hard for me to hear, sorry.
Yeah, did anything come up that changed the trajectory of the project? And how did you get buy-in from leadership knowing how ambiguous things could get towards the end of the year?
So number one, I made it very clear it would be ambiguous because I'm dealing with people, right? In software, the software is actually the easiest part. The hardest part is people, which is maybe not surprising to many of you. People is the hardest part. So there were teams that were ready to go. They understood this. They're like, yes, can I be a pilot team? People were like, yes, I want to. There were other teams that are like, crap, this feels like a threat because now they're actually gonna be measuring the quality of my stuff and I don't know it, so am I good or am I bad? People were having that internal struggle. I know because I was talking to them. So there were some things I wasn't anticipating. Number one, I wasn't anticipating that it would take me 3 months to get the ladder approved, just the titles. That took me forever to get that approved. I wasn't anticipating that. But every single week, I'd report back on my OKRs. All of these were turned into OKRs. Every single week, I would lead up and say, here's where I'm at. Here's where I'm at. It's taking me another week. The HR department's doing this. This team doesn't, I'm trying to get a calendar meeting with them so that way I can talk to them about this whole thing. And they're so busy with meetings that I don't have a meeting with them until next month. And I would basically just be leading up all the time and constantly communicating and keeping my stakeholders aligned with me. So this was the initial plan, but the only thing you can guarantee with the plan is that it's going to change. And I just made that very, very clear with my stakeholders.
Any other questions? We've exhausted this. Oh, in the back.
People, man, people.
Remember to use your cards if you have a new thread green card. Yep, there we go.
It's not a question, but just wanted to share experience, if I may. So I did something similar of what you have described here. And in my experience, and you can add in, was the collection of matrix and creating the story and insight around it took a lot of time and effort because A, nothing exists in the beginning, and then B, you are creating these from scratch. So it takes a lot of effort. Convincing the management is a second part. As you said, took a lot of meetings and whatnot, but also collecting the data, because a lot of these metrics you collect manually and you create a story around it, and why the insight around it, like why these metrics are important and how it's going to reshape the organization down the line. So I think, in my opinion, it takes a lot of time to like just collect the data and all.
Yeah, yeah, it takes time, but that's my job.
Yeah. No, I'm just sharing my screen.
Yeah. So yeah, it takes time, of course, but for me, it's exciting because it's something where I'm helping establish these things for the entire organization, and I take a lot of pride in that. And so I want to do it really well. For me, my skin's in the game on this because this is my idea, my initiative. And so if it fails, I fail, right? So I obviously want it to work, but I need to get other people online with me so then it scales. If it's just me evangelizing all of this, never going to work. So that's why the quality engineering community, to get them all to understand, working with leadership, working with management, that's why, because otherwise, if I'm doing it on my own, it would take forever. I would probably create a version. Everyone's gonna go, what does this even mean? We don't like this. We have all these questions or counters. It just wouldn't work very well. So instead, I'm getting multiple people aligned with me and along for the ride as well. So they start evangelizing. My CTO, for example, told me that they got my presentation and presented it to another group of people, and I wasn't there. And he's like, everyone understood it, everyone was aligned on it, and they all agreed with it. I'm like, shoot, cool, thanks. But it's that level of thing where if I can get other people to, while I'm not there, talk the talk and do the thing that I'm talking about, well, now I'm scaling. Now I'm in the sauce, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a good time.
So Carlos, you've done it at multiple different places,
Yes.
And had different experiences. I would love for you to just reflect on what you've learned about the state of quality and maybe leadership's perspectives towards that, and what's been the most revelatory thing to you during those times.
I would say two things. The two things that really stood out to me in my experience doing this now multiple places. Number one is that I think we all are aware of this. Most leaders don't see quality engineering, or I won't say quality engineering. They'll see QA as something that is, it's almost like this necessary evil they have to have. And so it's always funded the least, or it's always the second-class citizen. It's always this thing that they're like, I have to have a tester, but I don't really want a tester. And again, this is me, my experience. I'm not saying that's true. Just dealing with CEOs and CTOs and COOs, that's normally what the vibe is. The second thing is their lack of understanding, but also testers, their lack of understanding of what good quality and testing actually is. I think a lot of them fall into a trap of, I just want to test, and they're testing all the time, and they don't do anything else. Well, are you really impacting quality, or are you just reactive constantly? And I think that's the big thing, and that's why, like, I talk about, like, you want to prevent, you want to mitigate and detect. Most testers are in detect mode. I just want to detect bugs, find bugs, and give it somebody else to do. And I'm saying, can you prevent these things? Can you mitigate these things? Because I need to go fast. And if you're always in my way, you're going to be the person on that list where I go, well, could I hire another developer, or should I hire another tester? What do you think management's going to say? They're probably going to lean towards the developer. So if you have things like this that I'm talking about, where you're actually able to do all those things, those core masteries, the specialized masteries, if you're able to do those things and prove with data and evidence that you're actually making progress, your impact, your value is so palpable, it's so tangible, they're going to want more of you. But most testers fall into the trap of they're just detectors usually, and that's unfortunate because it makes the rest of us look bad. Harsh words, but alas.
Follow-up question from Matt.
Follow-up question. Do you feel like that is causative or correlated? Meaning, because of the mindset that may exist either in engineering or in quality, that they have caused that relationship to happen or to take place? Or is that something that is developed independently? I I'm very curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, I would say. Unfortunately, I think people will have a bad experience at one organization where, oh, we had release trains and we had testers had to validate everything, and even the tester would click the deploy button, so everything had to go through the tester. And the tester was basically the release manager. So they go somewhere else and they go, can we do something better than this? And the tester is almost the face of the gatekeeping. And so just kind of human psychology biases and everything, they go, I don't want to have that same thing again in a new place. They go somewhere else, and then there's testers there too, and they go, okay, what are these testers doing? It's just because the tester is usually in the way, quote unquote, they're always the face of slow, the face of queues, bottlenecks, when that's not necessarily the case. So you'll have some people that say, like, I just want to go fast. My immediate argument is then, well, then you get rid of CI. Like, just deploy to prod. What your goal is speed, just go to prod. Why have all these gates? It doesn't make any sense. And they go, well, actually, well, now we're talking. Now we have a conversation of, why do you want these quality gates? Why am I calling them quality gates? Who's owning those quality gates? Now it's a conversation of that. And usually when you educate people, the light bulb clicks for them and they go, oh, so that's what my tester is doing. Like, well, that's what they should be doing at least. And then the narrative starts to change. So I think that's what happened at Sequel, where when I first started, one of the opinions was, what if we get rid of all the testers? And I countered that very quickly because I see value in what we do. But if I couldn't convince them, then yeah, they probably would have been like, all right, well then we don't need the testers at all. But because of some education, because of some learning, they understood and they went, all right, let's try this then. Let's try Carlos's strategy and let's see what we can do.
Thank you, Carlos. We're at time.
I know we're at time.
Is there a way that we can connect with you?
Just at Carlos Kidman, honestly, everywhere. I hope you all come up and talk to me. I'd love to talk to you as well. And if there's something you're like, Carlos, I don't agree with you, I'd love that even more. But no, just at Carlos Kidman on all the socials and things. Thank you.